He spent all of season 4 telling us that Charles was the devil. And there was no balance. So now season 5 is, hey, Diana's also crazy. And Charles is a really good guy. Y'all, we're the Good Doctors of Abbey Research. I'm Dr. Kristen.
And I'm Dr. Erin.
You are so welcome to our tiny corner of the internet to chat about the season 5 finale of Netflix's The Crown that felt nothing like a finale and was honestly one of the more disjointed episodes of the season. So it was weird. The episode was odd.
Yeah.
I think. I told Dr. Erin in the Slack channel that I kept pausing it because I wasn't interested, but I wasn't not interested in the whole episode. Like, things just kept happening where I was like, oh, I have something else to do. And I would hit pause. I haven't done that all season.
Yeah.
So it was a very strange. It was very strange. The recap duties fall to me.
Yes.
So there are at least 14 storylines in this.
Wait, before you get into the 85 storylines, we should say over on our Patreon, our Monarch moment for this episode, because there's 85 storylines, we kind of struggled. It's not going to be the greatest Monarch moment, but we'll have fun talking about it. And who knows what will come once we start and hit the record button. But we are going to be talking about the dramatic change in the late 90s that took place in Great Britain, in the United Kingdom, and around the world. Kind of talk a little bit about why the election of Tony Blair was such a big deal, why Labour winning that election was such a big deal, what kind of era it brought in, and then some larger global politics and some seasoning in that soup. So that's going to be our Monarch moment over on the Patreon. If you are a patron, we'll see you there. If you're not a patron and you'd like to join us, links below. Which of the 14 storylines would you like to start with first?
Let's start with the Al-Fayeds, because they're back.
Because they're back! Hey!
So, obviously, Muhammad and Diana have maintained some sort of friendship. So, the episode ends with the planning of the infamous trip to Saint-Tropez, where Dodi and Diana meet. But throughout the episode, we see Dodi and his dad sparring. We see Dodi get engaged to a nameless model actress who is
whatever.
In his films, ? We learn that his movie producer career since Chariots of Fire has gone and it's not going great for him. And really that Dodi is a better father and family figure to Diana than he is to his own son, which is not particularly uncommon for men such as Muhammad Al-Fayed, who have very specific ideas about what legacy looks like and what proper behavior is. These are the kind of folks who are always better grandparents than parents. Mm-hmm. And like growing up, as you grow up as a grandchild of one of these people, you know, you say to your parents like, oh my God, it must have been so much fun growing up with Granda. And they just like have to stone face it because they don't want to ruin your relationship with them. That's the energy Muhammad brings to everything.
Yeah, it's strikingly similar to Lizzie energy with her grandkids.
Yep,
but
very, very similar.
She's a bit more serious probably than he is because she's still the monarch, but similar energy.
Yeah, did want to throat punch both of them when they were talking Arabic at the table, talking a language people don't understand in front of them in intimate settings is one of the probably my top 5 pet peeves. Top 5 pet peeves.
Super rude.
Absolutely no idea why we spend so much time on Dodi and the model actress fiance that is not going to matter, because I mean, I think
not gonna matter.
It's part of the story that he was engaged when they met, and like that a scandal. But like, still, again, a Chiron, a Chiron.
Who cares?
I didn't care about her.
Cut her out. No offense to her. I'm sure she's a lovely person. But, like, cut her out of the whole story. It's not necessary. We know where this is going. We're all in the ride to see where it's going. Like, why did I have to know about her? Why did they spend all this time? And, like, he's in Los Angeles. Clearly, he doesn't stay in Los Angeles. Like, at this point, we're getting so close. Literally, like, an episode away from their meeting and their relationship that, like, why are we messing with all these other weird little details? I didn't get it.
Like the whole opening phone call, and he was like, she's really special. I was like, the whole time as he was talking, I was like, what was Diana doing in LA?
You're like, oh wow, we jumped ahead. Oh no, wait, we didn't. It's another blonde Mary. Okay.
It was just all very... So the main Diana story is this really kind of fun, quirky scene where she walks around the house redialing a phone vote on No to the Monarchy. That was actually kind of fun. I enjoyed that moment.
I did.
And then her kind of, again, telling us that being divorced and being Diana is very hard, which it totally is. Yeah. I will say the most impactful shot of this entire episode was the recreation of one other. I mean, that paparazzi shot is burned in my brain of her like half turned around on her way back from the Swan Lake opera, the Swan Lake ballet. The recreation of that scene and everything they've done with Diana and Cars this season has been very, very well. It could have been for me, it was well tense. It was like well tuned in the tension. It could have gone into macabre or schlocky. I don't feel it did. And this was another example of that, where it's like that panic, like a good moment to remind us of what her life was actually like. And that the Al Fayads offered her safety and protection in ways the Crown never gave a shit to.
Yeah, 100%. I think it was that sequence where, you know, she goes to the ballet and then goes out to dinner afterwards with Muhammad and his wife was a good sequence to kind of ground you again in what it meant for her to leave the house, the Kensington Palace, but you know what I mean. And I think they did a good job, I think, of dramatizing her relationship with the press without sensationalizing it.
Yeah,
this season. Because it was dramatic and it was intense and it was all of those things that led to her death. But they didn't like turn it up too much so that it was like, you know, tabloidy or whatever. It was just, and I agree with you, like the suspense built into it was, you know, some of the work we did ourselves because we know where it's going, but also the show handled it really with subtlety, which the show doesn't often always show us that it knows how to do things subtly. So it's such whiplash watching this show. It's like they'll do things so like intricately and subtly, and then they'll be like, boom, boom, Charles wants to be king, boom. But like, he's not going to be king, so why?
Speaking of Charles, we spend a lot of time on him this episode. And the other three remaining stories are all pretty intertwined. So we have the fucking yacht again. Tired of the yacht.
Oh my God. So tired of the yacht. Why are we on the yacht again?
Fucking yacht. We got Hong Kong and the decolonization, but yet still the recolonization of Hong Kong.
Yeah. Poor Hong Kong.
Poor Hong Kong. But the de-British colonization of Hong Kong. And we have this Charles vacation and Blair. Oh, and then there's four because then we have global politics. So these four are kind of all messy. Like it's all messy together. So we have the yacht is going to finally get decommissioned. Charles takes the last journey on it, which I thought was pretty shitty of him. It should have gone to his mom. But I mean, like, that is probably the energy that Charles is carrying into, like, his life right now. Like, that was fucking intentional. I get it. But also, like, that was petty, Chaz. Like, there are some other things we could have done here. I just like taking I like making my points using more words than passive-aggressive actions, which is another reason I would never fit into the firm. I think we're probably on reason 4.7 million, so you just let me know if you need a recap of the first. Reasons 1 through 150 are that I'm not a size 2. So, like, just... Ugh, bless. And my blood is not anywhere close to blue. But... So he takes Camilla on a vacay after Hong Kong.
On the yacht.
On the yacht to Manila. If I was, like, I don't care that he paid for it. Like, that just felt all sorts of, like, come on, my dude. Come on. All your talk and nonsense about, you know, everything needs to change. You're still going to use the damn royal yacht. And you're still going to get annoyed that you're flying business class and not first class.
Yeah, it's such a, like, you know, and I think it's interesting to portray him as a contradictory person. Mm-hmm. And the kind of the battle between his own privilege and his genuine desires to modernize the monarchy. I think that's an interesting storyline. But as you and I were talking about this episode offline before we started recording, I was like, what did this episode tell me that I didn't already know about this part of Charles's personality? How did it advance what I knew about this part of Charles's personality? And the answer is it didn't, and it didn't. And so then I'm like, why are we... It felt like we were rehashing something from earlier in the season. Like, that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
It was like a recap of something, but with a slightly different story. And I'm like, I already know that he wants to modernize things. I already know that this version of Charles that you have created for this show has secret meetings with prime ministers. Like, it didn't work on John Major. It's not going to work on Tony Blair. But, like, okay.
I could just be a voice for my husband really briefly, the plane nerd. The plane scene bothered me.
Oh, okay.
For no other reason than that's not how a British Airways 747 is laid out. And it would make the most sense. And I'm not going to Google this because I don't really care. So I have no idea if this is true or not. But I will say, so on those double-decker planes, business class is actually that second bit. Mm-hmm. And it's that, and like it's the second bit because there are like tables and a whole thing. It is business class, so business can get done. So the politicians most likely would have been up there because they are first class caliber seats with business space. First class is in the very, very nose of the wing on the bottom. And there's only 8 of them, and it doesn't look like that. And there's a whole galley, like a big galley, in between first class and everything else. So I was like, you are okay. I understand this is a plot device, I understand, but I just wanted to bring the plane nerds into this conversation for a minute, because it felt...
And, like, what
it
did
felt
it
weird.
show
like,
us?
why did I need all of that? Yeah.
Yeah, like, that's the thing. I'm like, what did you tell me with that? You told me that, like, he wants to be modern, but he still wants to be privileged. Okay. Hashtag the Prince of Wales. Like...
Hashtag anyone with privilege. Any liberal with privilege. Like, okay.
Okay. Like, yeah, it was just so... I just felt like so much of this episode was unnecessary. And, you know, as we were talking about it, and, like, literally the day that we are recording this, for posterity, if anyone's curious, January 24th, 2022.
Or 23.
Was also... 2023. Crap, it is a new year. 2023, apologies. Is also a day that they released information about season 6 of The Crown.
Yes.
In which we learned several things, which I'll drop in a couple now, but we'll talk more about it in our season 5 recap when we talk about where we think the show should go in season 6. But we learn more about, like, how much of Diana's life remains to be shown in the show. And you and I talked about this, and it was like, it just felt so weird to have saved Dodie and Diana's meeting for season 6.
Yep.
When this article says that only the first part of the season is going to be about the last year of her life or whatever, however much time we have before they die, because the season's going to go all the way up to 2002, maybe 2003. 2002 was a Jubilee year, and both when Princess Margaret and the Queen Mother died, so I'm pretty sure they're going to show that. So it was just drawing it out in this episode was so weird when you could have literally just done the real quick bit about I'm engaged to my girlfriend. Oh, come on my yacht in Saint-Tropez. And then it could, the rest of their episode could have been a meet cute. And so we could have started off, I guess where I'm getting at, not quickly, but I just got there in my head, is the season finale is supposed to build momentum for season 6 for the next season. Any season finale is supposed to build momentum. Supposed to wrap up some storylines, build momentum. The only storyline we wrapped up was John Major, which, we were always going to do that because he got ousted. We didn't wrap up anybody else. And, but what momentum did it build? It just kind of, went...
Yeah, it was
the final scene was, Diana packing for Saint-Tropez. We all know she goes on the trip. We've all seen the pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just really, They needed to end it going up an incline, and they ended it, stalled halfway down an incline, and I just don't...
Even if we had gotten a scene where, they are on the yacht, and Muhammad says, "This is my son, Dodi."
Yeah.
End.
And scene. Woo! Drums.
So this was strange.
Yeah.
Instead, we end with the decommissioning of the yacht. I lost all patience with the privilege of the Windsors, with the "we want a new yacht even though it's a recession." It became not fun for me to, I didn't care for Philip before then, but, cry me a river. I thought the conversation between Charles and Lizzie was very good. I have a feeling, I struggle to believe it is factual, but I do believe that it was very good. And I agree. I mean, really what she brought was Victorian morals, because in Britain, Queen Victoria kind of set the culture until the 1960s. Yeah. And still to this day, the Victorian culture is what gave us Brexit. It's never really been dismantled. And so that was a good point. It was audience service more than anything else. But I appreciated that point. The only other thing that I want to mention is that Johnny Lee Major, while he never became Johnny Lee Major, that's what I'm going to call him from here on out. Johnny Lee Miller's performance as John Major made me quite like John Major.
I know. I know.
And I will miss him on the show because your man playing Blair is not a good physical representation of Tony Blair.
You guys.
It's very jarring.
He doesn't look like him. It was so jarring when the first time he appeared in this episode. I was like...
And to my memory, I need to watch some YouTube, but he doesn't talk like him either.
No, I don't think so.
I was like, this doesn't sound like Blair to me. I mean, it's been a minute since I watched interviews with Tony Blair, but, he definitely doesn't look like him. And he definitely doesn't look like him in 1997, because Tony Blair looked like an Eton professor who hadn't eaten in 14 years. He was vaguely emaciated and had terrible hair.
Very long face.
Long face.
Yeah. I mean, we watched a lot of footage of Tony Blair from that era because the signing of the Good Friday Agreement in 1998, of which he was intimately involved in those proceedings as the, head of the British state. So yeah, that he doesn't look anything like Tony Blair. But thank you, Johnny Lee Major, for your service. By all accounts, John Major was a good dude, is a good dude. So I thought this season was a lovely tribute to a premiership that not a lot of people know anything about. Did they teach us a lot about his premiership? No, but they showed him as a nice person. So that was nice. Yeah, that we'll talk about Tony Blair more in the Monarch moment, but that was just weird. That led to that fed the incongruousness of the episode to me too. It was so jarring to be like, oh, we're switching to Tony Blair. That's not what Tony Blair sounds like. That's not what Tony Blair looks like. Like,
yeah.
And it felt very lacking in context for like why it was such a big deal that Labour won. I think that's Peter Morgan just being British and like presuming that everyone knows global politics. It's just not true.
I just want to touch on Hong Kong, and then honestly, that's all I got.
Yeah, yes, let's touch on Hong Kong, and then I want to speak a little bit about how weird it was that one of the themes of this whole episode was like Charles taking over when he didn't. But let's talk about Hong Kong first, because that has to do with Charles.
So for anyone who doesn't know, Hong Kong is currently a Chinese protectorate. It was very strange watching this footage today, in that over the last several years, Hong Kong has been full of protests about being a Chinese protectorate. Every line in Charles's talk about like a new leadership or whatever, there's no way they believed that at the time, because while we had no idea what China truly was in 1997, based on like, we had no idea what China was going to become. Mm-hmm. We knew what they were. And picture of diplomatic, unified leadership, they never were. So, like, that was a lot of pandering, which is fine. That's what royal speeches are. But it was even more jarring, like, with actual evidence in my brain that it's not true.
Yeah, and, like, the visual representation of, like, the immediate military occupation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was part of that.
I've been to Hong Kong twice. Once was about 10 years after the takeover, and once was about 8 years later. It is if you ever get a chance to go, please go. It's a wonderful, fascinating city. It's a really interesting combination of things. Like, I had soup dumplings at Marks and Spencer's. Like, that those two things don't go together, but like, they're like, you know, I had one of the fanciest meals of my entire life in Hong Kong, and I also got ramen, not ramen. I also like went to a noodle shop and ate dinner for $1. Like, it's a huge city of disparities. It doesn't get the kind of global conversation about that as much anymore since the building of Dubai and the rise of Malaysia and some other things, the rise of Singapore in particular and Macau. But the kickoff of kind of Western introduction into Asian wealth in a very real way is the British leaving Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. So it was a weird sit. I have some Hong Kong friends that I know would have a real hard time watching that footage. And so that sat with me, that were like children when the occupation happened. But like, I was walking around Hong Kong in 2009 and saw military. And like, I remember looking at my mentor and being like, why are there military police? Like, is something going on? He's like, no, this is just how they do things here.
Yeah.
And that was a little bit jarring. So I'm glad that they showed that even outside of Charles. I'm glad we got that piece of decolonization. Unfortunately, it was not decolonized for the people of Hong Kong. It still remains, in the view of many of the people, in the view of many citizens of Northern Ireland, they feel colonized and many don't. Hong Kong, from statistics, appears similar. So I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, and I mean, they've certainly dealt with colonization and decolonization from the British Empire's perspective throughout this season. So I think it was appropriate to do this outside of Africa. They've pretty much just dealt with like Africa and like British colonies in the Caribbean, and referencing the Falklands. Them. And the Falklands, yeah. So we hadn't really done any Far East representation of the British Empire, so I thought that was good. The fact that it was, you know, I'm not sure what he's doing with this narrative that Charles is like preparing to take over the job. And
it's
like
possible
wants
that was
to,
real,
like,
but like it feels awkward.
it feels super awkward. Like, you'd got to show me the evidence that this was real and that he was like talking to his mom about when she was going to step down. She was never going to step down. I also don't think Charles would have asked her because he was raised in a family that, like, he was raised by a mother who was in that position because of abdication. Like, she was never going to abdicate. So you'd have a hard time selling me that Charles believed that. And it just feels clunky to have spent so much time in this episode, so much time in other episodes this season, with Charles being like, this is the kind of monarch I'm going to become. And I'm like, well, you're going to have to put pause on all of these plans, boyo, because your mom doesn't die until 2022. Like, it's like 25 years later. So I just don't, like...
And
narratively, I can't wrap my head around it because we also know he's not going to go all 25 years. And, like, the show is not going to end with us seeing
King Charles
and his coronation. So, like, how are you going to wrap up that storyline? Because whenever the show ends in the 2000s, Lizzie is still very much alive. So it was just, yeah, that whole part of this episode... I kind of understood why we did it, like, earlier on in the season, because, you know, this was Charles in the 90s, and we were, like, setting the stage for his character in the 90s. But to have it be so much of the season finale, when we know the next season is not, like, what's it going to do with that? Yeah, it just felt like dragging kind of a dead appendage. Like, why? It's still back there, but you can't do anything with it. It was just so bizarre.
Especially because there is nothing at any point in time from the other side of this equation. Like, Elizabeth is not ill. Like, she didn't, like, I don't... All
there wasn't,
that it
like,
seems
a
to
medical
kick off
diagnosis?
Is, like, he turned 40 and decided it was
yes.
time for him to become king. And, okay. The other bit is that the finale especially felt like a Charles apology tour. Of Peter Morgan kind of saying to us... I guess the back half of the season kind of does. He spent all of season 4 telling us that Charles was the devil. Mm-hmm. And there was no balance. So now season 5 is, hey, Diana's also crazy. And Charles is a really good guy.
Yeah.
And it felt like, oh, don't worry. Like, Charles standing up for, like, you know, when he said, like, we're giving it back or taking it back or something about Hong Kong, I was like, I don't think Charles believed that. Like,
yeah.
If Charles was a decolonizer in any way, shape, or form, that boy would not be, like, he would have done a lot of different things. And including not giving Camilla some of the jewels that he gave her. And including, I'm assuming he's going to wear a crown when he gets coronated. And I'm going to guess he's going to wear stuff stolen from other places. If he doesn't, I will be delighted that I am wrong. But... So, it all felt very like, don't worry, guys, Charles is a good person. Like,
yeah, like, the monarchy's in good hands. But she doesn't die, Peter. Like, she's...
I mean, I could see him, like...
the monarch.
He was writing this while, like... I mean, after Philip died.
Sure,
and, like,
so
time was just on our side. So this is another time in which, like, Philip is writing... Peter Morgan is using this show to have an agenda in 2022. When he's really writing in 20... you know, whatever. He was telling us, the 2022 audience, something that the 1990s could not actually contain.
Yeah.
But they did.
It's a good way to say it.
That just felt weird.
Yeah.
And again, he wanted to tell the story of Charles, the story of Diana, the story of their marriage, and the story of Lizzie. All 4 of those stories all season. And the poor boy never found the balance.
No. And there were lots of good episodes.
Great moments, great scenes.
And great moments and great scenes in the episodes. But yeah, overall consistency, it was like a pinball machine of like bouncing in between the different stories he was telling. Yeah. And it's just one of the weirdest endings to an episode. Lizzie's on a yacht. Mohammed's on a yacht. Dodi's engaged. That's going to last a real long time. And Diana is packing her boys up for a trip.
End scene.
It's just... Oh, I can't wait for the opening scene of the next episode.
It was, yeah.
I can. It was just a meh. It was just a meh ending.
Yeah, we're not going to get the next episode until the end of 23, beginning of 24. And so I will promise you that almost everything about this will fall out of my brain between then and now. Now and then. So who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. But I think we'll pause our discussion here and head over to the Patreon to just talk a little bit about the late 90s and maybe a little bit about how you could cast Tony Blair better. Like, I get if Michael Sheen wasn't available, but my dude, there had to have been better options. So we hope to see you over there for a little bit more chats. But if you're staying on the YouTube, next week or next up will be our season 5 recap, where we will break down all these themes in more detail and talk about what we would like to see happen in season 6. So we will see you wherever we see you next. Take care, everybody.